Talking about the pandemic, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, the whole world is in panic. So, what if there's a health monitoring system which would monitor this and get control over this? Hello, everyone. I am Suraj VG from Atria Institute of Technology, here to present my topic on health monitoring system under the guidance of Hemalata KM. Moving on to the contents, firstly, I'll be briefing out the summary of the entire process, and we'll once we move on to the introduction, we'll see how, what, and why this can be useful in different ways. Coming on to the flow diagram, we'll get to know about the flow architecture of the module, and moving to the literature survey, we'll have a short study of how this is important with implementation and the proposed system, the idea of my proposal, and the future advancements, and when this will get a huge growth in the industry with a conclusion. So, moving on to the abstract. In the recent years, we have seen a lot of development in the healthcare society. So, there's a lot of data inflow and outflow in the society. So, this can be used as a helpful tool in where we can establish a health monitoring system and monitor each patient's data. How this can be done? There can be a STM32 microcontroller or anything. So this acts as a platform where a single platform where you can have to monitor the patient's records and store the records. This can have notification panel and emergency updates for the caretaker or the doctor who is in charge. So this would be really helpful. So moving on to the introduction, IoT, the use of IoT is increasing day by day, and the number of devices connecting to the IoT is increasing every day. According to the research, around 2025, there will be 6 billion devices connected to the internet. So we can actually see this as an advantage in health monitoring system and healthcare development. So how this can be an advantage? Let's take three main common uses. Like let's consider the first scenario where a person is met with an accident and he is in a critical situation, and the doctor has no clue what's the patient's record and details currently. And what if he is connected to a health monitoring system? The health monitoring system stores and collects all the data, and then the data is sent to the database, and hence the doctor can have all the recorded records of the patient, and he can immediately charge and discharge the patient and do all the setup prayer before the patient arrives to the hospital. What if there's no health monitoring system? The doctor is clueless, the patient is clueless, the patient is in critical situation. Once the patient arrives, they need to complete all several checkups and scan for the body, and then they'll get to know what's actually happening. By the time it may be too late, and the patient might even lose his life. So coming to long term period of house rest or bed rest. So what if there's a patient who has gone through a heart surgery and he has been given a 3 month bed rest? So affording a nurse or caretaker can be actually quite expensive. But with health monitoring system, you can monitor their activity on daily basis and then record the condition of the patient. And once the patient comes to normal, or once he is back fit, it can send a notification to the caretaker or the nurse. This can reduce the stress for caretaker and even the patient. So what if there's a patient living in distant areas like the villages which has lack of hospital facility? So you can't up and down to the cities every day for checkup, right? So if there's a health monitoring system, the doctor gets to know all the patient details with the help of the system. So each time the record is updated, the doctor keeps an eye on the patient, and once there's an emergency or an issue, the patient is called to the hospital. This can reduce the stress between the patient and the doctor. Moving on to the flow diagram. So we have biomedical sensors. So there are basically three main important parts. data collection, data processing, and data communication. So in data collection, we have used STM32 microcontroller, and its uses will be explained later. So coming to biomedical sensors, you have lots of sensors, that is accelerometer to check patient position, glucometer sensor, oxygen in blood. So you can check that, and using airflow sensor, you can check the breathing rate of the person, with skin responsive sensors, whether he's sweating too much or not, and using sphygmomanometer and body temperature sensor. So all these sensors are connected to a sensor interface shield, and this data is collected and sent to the database. Once the database is, so basically this is the part of data collection. STM helps in sending the data to the cloud. So in data processing, once the data is accumulated, the main part is to store and record in a structured way. So once we want to have a check on what's going on with the patient, data processing is the main part. After data processing, in the data communication channel using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, the data communication is sent. The data is sent to the notification panel or user interface. So we can see that there's a patient ID 8110 with all the details of blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, everything. So you can even navigate through the patient ID and get to know how his history was and treat accordingly. STM32 comes with a inbuilt Wi-Fi and Bluetooth module. This helps it to get better performance. Coming to the literature survey, so the first one was health and diagnosis based symptoms of the patient. He was checking the symptoms of the patient, and he used to collect and analyze the disease, and then accordingly treat the patients. So the next one is to identify patients' data in different geographical locations, and to maintain a record which is sent to the doctors and hospitals and laboratories. So once it is sent, the medical history is stored of the patient, and once the patient arrives, his medical history is checked, and he can be treated along with the process. So the next one is the data transmission and due to wireless devices like sensors. So he has a platform where it can be stored, and this can be useful for the doctor. And IoT can be also useful in promoting healthcare in a better way. This information could be interacted with the doctors who are in emergency. Moving on to the implementation, there are basically three parts in this monitoring system: data collection, data monitoring, and data communication. So, biometric data collection will have the sensors connected to the body using sensor interface shield, and the microcontroller platform is mapped into the data records. And this initially also maps the data sensors to the patient's database. And due to this, once the temperatures and all the other values are corrected by the patient body, this is sent to the patient's database, and it can be stored in the patient's database for a history also checkup also. Coming to data processing, patient's body parameters should be monitored regularly and can be used to keep a track of patient's history, and it is updated onto the cloud. So once there's any issue in the patient's history, this can be useful where his body parameters can be monitored and can be checked up regularly. Coming to the user interface, why do we need a user interface? So that the caretaker or the doctor understands the basic necessities of what he's going through. So what's a user interface? It's nothing but a graphical representation of whatever we are trying to display. So with the help of user interface, we can determine the parameters of the body like body temperature, heart pressure, and everything on the platform. With this often consists of a mobile application or a PC application. So coming to the Sensine platform, you have the STM32 controller connected to all the sensors, and then in a data acquisition, you get with the data acquisition, you can monitor all the details. Coming to the proposed system, what basically the idea is to develop a Visual Studio application which is a native application and which works on Windows as well as a smartphone. And in case of any emergency, the caretaker or whoever it is gets a notification alert first. And the caretaker in charge gets an emergency notification immediately if there's a fluctuation in the body. And STM32 comes with an LCD display where you can navigate through the patient's history and you can view the patient's eh, data there itself. So basically, once the data is pushed onto the cloud, how does the PC gets the data? The data is fetched from the particular database, and when you enter IID, the ID is mapped into the database of patient's record, and this is fetched by the application, and this is displayed on the dashboard. Hence, this can be useful on both Windows as well as in smartphone. So coming to the Windows application, once you enter the patient ID, you'll get his name, temperature, airflow, pulse, everything with the blood pressure itself. And you have the history where you can browse through his history. And when you have to perform a certain checkup or whatever it is, you can get to know his history and what he has been suffering through, and you can have a clear idea about it. The same is displayed on the smartphone. You can have it on smartphone or a Windows application. Moving on to the future advancement. So in the future, healthcare is getting a huge growth, especially after the COVID outbreak. This is going to be the major sector where there will be a lot of investments. A band or a health monitoring system can be affordable. It's so affordable that even it's cheaper than the Netflix yearly subscription pass. So once you have this band, you can temperature, blood pressure, heartbeat, and everything, and this can be recorded. And once it's recorded, you can act accordingly. So the future is the future of healthcare is totally on health monitoring system, and it's for consumer safety. So, by concluding, I would say that this is a standard way of health monitoring, and this can be affordable. And this is a module where everyone can afford it easily with a cheap cost. And the microcontroller used is absolutely the microcontroller is a standard microcontroller, and it is high performance, and it has 168 input output peripherals, and which has a Wi-Fi module and Bluetooth module with which you can have a LCD display to navigate through the patient's record and data history on the spot. So you have great biomedical sensors. With the help of these sensors, you can monitor the data, and this is sent to the cloud. And once it's crossed the threshold value, you can get to know he's in danger. So coming to the microcontroller, the value is synchronized periodically, and the records are stored into the cloud, and the doctor gets to know the clear value when the patient is monitored and when the patient is in a danger. He can act accordingly when there's a threshold value kept and the threshold value is crossed. So, paper publication details. I published my paper in IJSART journal, that is International Journal for Science and Advanced Research and Technology, in volume 6 and issue 4 of April this year. This is the URL of the paper, and this is the certificate I have been awarded for health monitoring system. So these are few important and useful resources I found on internet. One's the home telehealth Internet of Things. The other one is design flow of wearable heart monitoring system. The next one is a telehealth monitoring system for disease remote monitoring, few useful resources. And finally, I take this moment to thank uh, our guide Hemalata KM and Pallavi ma'am through helping me making this seminar a success.